Developer for the University of Washington, lead developer for their radiology web services team, which as of at least a few months ago is now actually two whole people instead of just me, which makes it a lot less humorous to call it a team. I'm going to start off by offering you guys a little bit of a preview of where it is that we're going to be going today. First off, I'm going to start off by telling you a little bit about myself. Then we'll talk a little bit about the Plone community. And then we'll finish up by talking about ways that you can fit into the whole big picture that we have going on here. Start off with, as I said, I'm a developer for UW Radiology. As a developer, I've cultivated a certain appearance and way of working with the world. I'm also a musician. I play Chinese instruments mostly now, although I started out in the early years as a trumpet player and a piano player and a bass player, and I did a lot of computer music composition, things like that. I'm also a father, or a husband and a father of two adorable little children who I miss terribly, having been here for way too long already. The big question, though, is how did I get here? How did I end up standing in front of you guys delivering this speech today? Well, way back in the long ago, I started out in computer music as a computer music composer. I worked in tools like Super Collider, which is kind of a Smalltalk variant language, also working with Lisp with tools like Common Music and Common Lisp Music, and then C with C Sound and other things like that. That's how I kind of got my start in the world of programming. Eventually, I decided that I wanted to build myself a personal website so that I could tell folks about me and show some of the things that I was working on. So I went and learned how to do HTML with this wonderful Volcano website that taught you all sorts of nifty tips and tricks in flat HTML. Unfortunately, I eventually let it out that I knew how to do HTML, which got me the department website. For that, I ended up teaching myself Dreamweaver, and eventually moving on into PHP for some applications that I was doing in building history tools and database tools and things like that that I thought were sort of enjoyable. PHP had its own kind of side effects for me. As time went along, I kind of came to realize that music doesn't pay, at least not well. And so when it came time to move on to having a family and a wife and so on and so forth, I really kind of needed to get a job. So I looked around and I found a job with an organization called the University of Washington Department of Continuing Medical Education. They had a crappy old website built in Frontier that they needed to get rid of, and they wanted me to come in and build them or implement some kind of a content management system. So I built a new website for them. It had kind of a CMS quality in the background of it. It was a PHP LAMP stack kind of thing. And it taught me a lot about content management systems, primarily how much of a pain in the ass it is to build one and have it actually work well. They are not easy to do well, and I think it's really wonderful that we actually have something in Plone that does most of the hard work for us. Now, CME was a really small office filled up with fairly non-technical staff members who had little understanding of the kinds of things that I was doing and even less appreciation for it, which on my part led to a certain feeling of frustration and anger as I saw some of my better ideas kind of ignored and passed up where other ideas that may not have been quite so good got adopted. But really the worst part about all of this was that I felt like I had no one to talk to. There wasn't anybody in the office that I could chat with when I built something that was particularly fancy or interesting or exciting. Developers are kids at heart. We all want to run out and we want to show mommy this cool thing that we just found on the ground or that we just built. There was nobody there who could really appreciate me. So I started looking around for places that I could go. And one day I got what I like to refer to as the call up to the big leagues. The University of Washington Department of Radiology, who once again had a crappy old Frontier website, which was largely a result of the fact that the guy who hired me for CME and the guy who hired me for radiology were the same person. And he'd built both of those sites way back in 1994. So they had long history of having websites around. They again wanted us to come in and build CMSs, but after my experience with the CME thing and building a CMS and learning about how difficult that was, I decided I didn't really want to solve all the problems on my own anymore. So we began to evaluate some of the options that were out there in the CMS world. Plone really, after a fairly long period of evaluation, rose to the top. And maybe about 3 days after we'd made the decision to actually go with Plone and I'd downloaded my first instance of the installer and set it up and started playing around with it, it was announced that the Plone conference for 2006 was going to be held in Seattle, which we took as a sign from the gods that we'd made the right choice. So my boss and I went to the Plone conference. We attended boot camps with the Venerable Joel Burton. We went to a lot of the sessions there. And one of the things that really struck us about it was how friendly an environment it was. You know, people were really open. They were very friendly. And you could walk into a room and be standing right next to Alex Leamy, who was the guy who'd written this thing in the first place. And that really was quite impressive to us. This aspect really reinforced our decision and helped us to feel like we'd really made the right choice in going with Plone. Now, it is a truism, as Alex has pointed out, that Plone is a great product. It's also a truism that Python is a great language to work in. However, it's also a truism that many systems are great. There's a lot of really good stuff out there in the world. But what separates out Plone from some of the other systems that we might want to participate in is community. Community really sells the product. And why is that? Well, there's a number of reasons. First off are sort of benefits to you as a developer or a person working with Plone of any stripe. The first benefit to yourself is that you really get a chance with a large community to build your knowledge. You can start out with relatively small projects because most of the big decisions have already been made. But once you've had a chance to kind of build your tolerance with the smaller projects, you can move on to much larger things and more complicated things. The ability to advance your knowledge like this helps you move along to the point where you can really hope to push something into the stack and become a part of the real core of Plone. And it also gives you the opportunity to help influence the direction that the project goes overall. Now, in addition to yourself, there are also benefits for your employer. Number one, as you're participating in the community and you're building your skills, they end up getting somebody who has a lot of skills, somebody with a wide tool set, somebody who's a jack of all trades. Additionally, it helps your employer to leverage the power of community. If you're participating in the community and helping out other people, then other people help you out, which means that where they have only one employee that they have to pay, they have a lot of people out there who are contributing to the code that they're using. And that's really a powerful selling point when you talk to your employees or when you talk to bosses about why they should go with a tool like this. That kind of power allows them to move really heavy loads with a relatively small amount of effort, and that's a very nice thing. The third benefit is benefits for your career. With a community like this, there's a lot of sort of word of mouth that allows you to build networks and build reputations. These kinds of things help it become a little bit more easy for you to make contacts and to get customers if you happen to be an independent contractor or something like that. People can learn about you by talking to other people in the community, and that really is a great way to build the sort of relationships that will make your career take off and help you to move in new directions. Also, the relationships that you get to build are with largely very interesting people. For one, here at the conference, you can meet Alexander Leamy or Alan Runyon. These are the two folks who helped to build Plone in the very beginning. And they're right here, right ready for you to talk to. Walk up to them, offer to buy them a beer, and they'll sit down and chat with you about all sorts of things. It's great. You can also meet folks like Hanno Schlichting or Martin Espelli, who are two of the folks that are making really important contributions to the core code. You can meet Alex Clark, who's the guy who has organized this conference and put it together for us. You can meet Steve McMahon, who's put together the Plone FormGen product, which is one of the great products that we all use, or Eric Steele, who's managed to create this glowworm thing that's kind of the next big tool that everybody's moving on to when it comes to working with your site and finding out how things happen. You can meet people like Vita Williams and Rob Porter, who have put together outstanding tools for us and are really big in the whole theming thing. You can also meet other folks who are on the Plone Foundation, people like Darcy Hanning and Ger Beckholt and John Stahl, who are very big figures in the Plone community and have a lot of influence. And it's a great way to get to know all these people, and it's really wonderful to have that kind of access right straight to the top of the stack. That's something that's, I think, pretty rare in other systems. It's also possible to figure out how you fit in. There are contributions that you can make. There are lots of people, in fact, who are making contributions to Plone. There's over 200 people who have access to the core repository, almost 200 people who have access to the archetypes repository. There's over 900 people, at least according to the latest statistics that I got, who have write access to the collective repository. So there's a huge community of people who are actually making contributions to this software on a daily, weekly, monthly, or semi-occasional basis. However, with this large community and the number of people who are making contributions, there's a certain amount of danger that comes up. The big problem is trust. with all those people contributing code, how can you tell that the code that you're getting or the code that's being written is of quality? How can you tell that the information that you're getting from people is information that's going to be reliable? This is a difficult problem to solve. Well, for us, trust is really built on reputation. Reputation is sort of directly proportional to the actions that you take within the community. However, it's important to know that the actions that you take have to be visible. You can't act off in a dark corner by yourself and expect anybody to know that you are doing quality work. Really, you have to make sure that there are people who see what it is that you're doing and that they are aware of the contributions that you're making. By doing so, you can help to build that reputation, which allows people to trust you and allows you to become one of the group of people who are contributing. And that helps the Plone community in general to know that we're built on a solid foundation. So I'm here today to encourage you all to come into the light. If you have not already begun participating in community, I really am here today to try and encourage you to begin to do so in whatever capacity you feel most comfortable. There's a twofold benefit to coming into the community and participating. The first benefit for you is that by participating, you get a chance to build social capital. Now, Cory Doctorow in his book, Down and Out in the Magic Kingdom, calls social capital WUFI, and he has a situation where all of economics are built off the idea of this WUFI. For us, I think WUFI is a way for us to be able to gather the kind of influence that allows us to influence decisions that are made about how Plone and how the software packages that make up Plone are built. If you can build enough of this social capital, well, that gives you an opportunity to step in and try and influence the direction that things are going. Now, the flip side of this benefit is for Plone. As a result of this kind of system that allows people at a relatively low buy-in bar to come into the community and participate, Plone gets a lot of developers and a lot of people participating in the community in all sorts of ways, and that's really a benefit for the software package. The more people we have participating, the fresher the product can stay, and also the broader and the more widely applicable the product can stay. So the question becomes, how can you, sitting out here in the audience, contribute to the Plone community? There are a lot of different ways. Now, the portion of the talk that I'm heading into here was covered last year at the conference in Italy by Darcy Henning, who's sitting over there. I think she did an outstanding job of it. There's a really great presentation on like the top 10 ways to participate. What I'm going to go over here is really a recap of what she covered in that talk, because I think it's worth hearing the same stuff twice. It's important information, and it needs to be covered, and you all need to hear it. In fact, probably more people than are just sitting in this room need to hear it. So these are really our gateways into the Plone community. I tossed this slide in here because it's the Great Gate of Kiev, and I met those folks from the Ukraine the other night at the bar, and when I saw the Gate of Kiev, I thought, gosh, I should put that slide in. So we're going to talk about a number of different gateways into the Plone community today: development, documentation, theming, internationalization, training and user groups, testing, QA, bug filing, those sorts of things, marketing, and blogging. We'll start out with development because it's probably the most obvious gateway into the community and the easiest one for people to access at the beginning, or perhaps the most apparent path in. Like I said, when you're working on developing in Plone, it's best to start small. I think one of the most valuable pieces of advice I got was in that very first boot camp that I took from Joel, where he said, start with a project that you can undertake, something that's going to be successful, because by building from success, you get that kind of confidence that allows you to move onward and upward to bigger and better things. The second piece of advice I would have for you is do not reinvent the wheel. There are a ton of products in the collective, and if you really take a careful look at them, you'll see that for any given application, sometimes there are 2 or 3 or 4 different products that address the same need. Especially now as we're moving forward into kind of the component architecture and the ZOAP 3 style of building products, this is no longer necessary. Even if there is a product that does some of what you can do, it's relatively easy to embrace and extend those products, or to go ahead and participate in a product. Find something that does most of what you want to do, jump in and begin contributing. A little story for this: when I was building the radiology website, I was looking for a tool that would allow us to put together and aggregate information about the faculty members and the staff people that we would have, that would allow us to build dynamic lists of those faculty members on our website so that the poor administrative assistants who used to have to do this kind of thing by hand would no longer have to do that. And I went looking around, and I found on the WebLion site this faculty staff directory product. And I looked at it and I thought, you know, this is a really great product. It does about 90% of the stuff that I want to do, maybe about 85% of the stuff, but it didn't have some of the membership things that I thought would be really important. I really wanted to manage membership and security and access control with the same kind of things that were allowing me to keep track of my faculty. So I contacted the folks at WebLion, I wrote them up on the IRC channel, and I said, hey, you know, I've looked at this product, it's got a lot of the stuff that I'm looking for, but there's this one aspect, this membership thing that I'd really like to contribute. What do you guys think about that? And almost immediately a response came back saying, you know, we've been thinking about that too, we'd really like to do it, would you like to participate? And I said, yeah, sure. And from that, I've managed to build a really great relationship with the folks at WebLion, Eric Rose and Eric Steele and Rob Porter and all the rest of them. And it's been an incredibly rewarding experience working with them and helping to push a product that actually is getting used by people. Another thing that you can participate in is working with core components. I think John Stahl, in the speech that he gave just before lunch, was talking about how there are a certain number of core components in Plone that kind of don't have anybody taking care of them right now. And it's really necessary for people to step up and take care of those so that they can continue to be moved forward and they can be updated, and some of the bugs that have been reported on them can be squashed out. And this is another place that if you're, you know, really talented advanced developer, you can make a great contribution. If you're just starting, however, I would encourage you to go ahead and dive in. There is going to be a beginner's sprint during the two-day sprints that we have this year, coming, what is it, Saturday and Sunday. So I would really encourage you to go ahead and get involved. Show up. Start trying to learn how to do this. Sprinting is a great way to get involved in the community. It's face time, which means you're being seen, and it's also face time, which means you get to interact directly with people who know a lot, and that's a great way to learn. Moving on from there, documentation is the next area in which we really are looking for contributions. Documentation is vitally important, and it is in fact highly visible. It's kind of a glamorous place to be doing work because documentation is how new users evaluate a product. One of the biggest complaints that you hear about us is that we don't have documentation. Well, it's not really true. We do. We have a ton of documentation. However, it is also true that poor documentation can drive users away, and sparse documentation isn't really particularly inviting to new people. Now, we do have a lot of documentation. However, it is kind of variable in quality and relevance and findability. Luckily, however, we also have a documentation team, which is made up of a number of great people who have really taken on this problem and are trying to address the problem by reorganizing our documentation and adding in tools that will make it easier for you out there and other new people who've come to the product to be able to find it. The team consists of Joanna Springsteen, who's sitting right over here, Martin Espelli, Steve McMahon, Matthew Wilkes, and Eric Rose, along with a large number of other folks. These are the folks who are going to be giving a talk tomorrow about the documentation team. And if you're at all interested in documentation, if you're a great writer, if you're a great editor, I would encourage you to attend that talk and then also to attend the documentation sprint that's going to be going on. What really needs to happen right now with Plone documentation is a lot of gardening. We need to be able to pull out some of the weeds that have grown up in there. We need to be able to discern amongst the quality versus the not quality. And we need to try and help those pieces of documentation that are really great to grow and thrive and become apparent to people. So please, if you are at all interested in documentation, go ahead and attend the Doc Sprint on Saturday and Sunday. You will be most welcome. Another place that you can contribute is in theming. Plone ships, obviously, with a very good basic theme. And this is, in fact, one of the things that drew me to Plone in the first place. One of the other sort of top contenders that I had when I was looking at CMSs was one called Bricolage. Bricolage is a great system, has a wonderful sort of back end for determining workflows and publishing and all. But when you finally have worked your way through all of that and you press the button to publish a document, you end up with a blank white page with an unformatted block of text on it. It's really bad. And it drove me away almost immediately. I couldn't imagine working with a system that didn't give me something that at least looked reasonable right straight out of the box. Another option that lives out there is Drupal, which has a ton of themes available for it, but most of them are kind of poor quality. If you plug them in, you may find that a large part of your stuff is breaking, and it ends up not selling the system particularly well. Once again, we have a team that's been built to address this. There is the UI team, but in addition, we've built a specialized team over the last while called the Out-of-the-Box Themes team that's been really working on addressing this situation, trying to build a number of themes that are going to actually ship with Plone. The team is led by Vita Williams, David Convent, and Dennis Mishanov. The three of them have really been doing an outstanding job putting together a website here on Open Plans that covers a lot of the most interesting aspects of theming. They have a lot of information about the best practices on how to build the theme. They've put together a quality checklist that allows you to sort of check off the boxes and the things that you should do to make a really good quality theme for Plone. And they have a number of sample themes that people have put together. A lot of them at the moment are still sitting in sort of HTML and image directories, but there are also a number of them that have actually already been implemented. They're looking for people to come and implement the rest of them and to help them with the rest of this work. There is also going to be a theming sprint going on this weekend, and this is another thing that if you're interested in design, if you're interested in theming, this is a place that you could go. You do not have to be a designer to participate in this. There's a lot of different ways that you can participate in theming, but if you are interested in that kind of a story, it's something that I would really encourage you to do. At this moment, though, the emphasis for the out-of-the-box team is beginning to shift. As I was talking with Vita about this, she's talking about how the out-of-the-box theme team itself is really working on trying to disband itself, moving this documentation that they've been creating back into Plone.org and sort of recombining with the existing UI and theme teams so that there can be a more sort of unified story. They've pushed this process a great deal forward for us and had a great deal of success in getting more themes established. Now that they've done that, and now that they've established all this information, it's time to kind of move on. So, the next place that you might want to participate is in internationalization. There's a lot of work that can be done there. One of the biggest selling points about Plone is the fact that it's available in all of these different languages. So the question comes down to, what language do you speak? If you're not an English speaker, or if you happen to speak some other language or some other dialect of English perhaps in a native fashion, the I-18N team is really looking for participation. There's a lot of ways that you can plug in there. The team tends to be led mostly by Hanno Schlichting and Godefroy Chappelle and Dornelis Tremea. The three of them are the people that are kind of at the head of it, but there's lots of opportunity for you folks to participate, and they welcome new people. Joel. Wonderful. Excellent. Thank you. All right. So after internationalization and I-18N stuff, we have training and user groups. Now, these tend to be really critical learning tools for folks who are just coming into the community. So I would encourage you, if you're relatively new, to attend trainings. There's a number of different people out there who offer them. You can go to the Plone boot camps that are offered largely by Joel back here. You can also go to a training offered by 6 Feet Up and the inimitable Kelvin Hendricks Parker. You could go to a training that's offered by Jazz Carta, which is either Nate Downey or Rocky Burt, these two gentlemen right here. Both are very friendly folks and people that chat with you about this. There are also trainings that are available for sort of the fringe technologies that are involved, or the stack technologies that are involved with Plone. So Philip von Weitershausen offers trainings in the ZOP 3 architecture, and from what I have heard is an outstanding instructor and a great giver of classes. Also, Chris Calloway, who's here this week, offers a lot of trainings available in more pure Python applications, and I have also heard that his trainings are outstanding and well worth attending. Another way that you can get involved at this level of training is by attending sprints. We've talked already about a number of them that are happening this weekend. There are a huge number more that are also going on. I would encourage you to check the list on the Open Plans site, find one that interests you and go. If you can't attend, there's also the opportunity to sponsor a sprint or to organize one even. There are a lot of different ways that you can work on sprinting. Now, remote sprinting is something that people talk about a lot, and it is something that is possible to do. However, I would encourage you to think about FaceTime. FaceTime is really important when it comes to sprinting. And if you're working with a team for the very first time, I think it's really important that you work with them in a face-to-face capacity, just so that you can establish a kind of relationship. I've tried a couple of times to work in remote sprints, and the only ones that have really worked for me have been ones where there were at least 1 or 2 people in the room that I knew well that I could work with. When you're on the outside, if people don't know you, if they aren't aware of you, if they don't know your skill set, then it's very easy for you to fall off their radar, and you can sit out there sort of banging on the window and nobody is paying attention to you. It can be a very frustrating experience. So FaceTime is pretty important when it comes to doing things like sprinting. Plus, when you're just sitting in the room with people, there's an amazing amount of things that you can learn from stuff like that. Another way to participate in events is to go to conferences or symposia that are being held around the country. Now, conferences, there's only one a year. They get picked by the foundation. The event location gets picked by the foundation from submissions that are made by various groups. The submission process, I believe, for next year's has already begun and will be closing sometime within the next week, I think, right? Maybe a week or 2 weeks, something like that. So we're already picking the location for next year's conferences. So if you're interested in doing that sort of thing, we would definitely urge you to put together a package and submit it for consideration. However, when it comes to symposia, no permission is required from the foundation or from anybody else to hold one. They are beginning to pop up. New Orleans has held one for a number of years now. The folks at Penn State put together one last year and are considering continuing to do that. I believe there's another one that's being scheduled for May this coming year. I went to that one and had a great time with it. It was a really terrific experience. And if you're interested in putting together these kinds of things, whether you live in the Americas or elsewhere, we would definitely encourage you to participate in such things or to think about organizing one of them. Another way that you can participate in the community locally is to go to user group sessions. User groups are a great way to get together. In Seattle, we have an organized user group that every Friday holds what they call Open Source Fridays. People from all over the place get together in one location on Friday afternoon and they work on open source projects. Doesn't necessarily have to be Plone, doesn't necessarily have to be Python. However, with all of those folks in the same group together, working together, you get this really wonderful atmosphere building where you can bounce ideas off of each other, you can ask questions of each other, and it's really a great way to learn and train. If you're interested in building one of these things, there is actually a page up where you can find out where these user groups are located. This page on plone.org has an enormous list of currently existing local user groups. John Stahl ensures me that he checks the comments at the bottom of that page and regularly rolls new groups into the list. So it's fairly fresh and it's up to date, and you should be able to count on it. If you see one that's in your city, start attending, contact them and get in touch. If there is not one that's in your city, then you can go ahead and start one of your own. Plone.org does also have an email list that's intended for people who are leaders of user groups. This is a great way to learn from other people who have started user groups what kind of events people will attend, great ways to get people involved, some ideas about things that you can do for events within your own local area. And that's a really wonderful way to get started in building a community around yourself and around your area. Finally, I would encourage you, if you're relatively new and you haven't already done so, to pop into IRC. It's really the primary communication method on a day-to-day basis for people within the community. A lot of stuff happens there. It's an extremely busy channel. If you go in basically any hour of the day, any day of the year, you will find upwards of 100 people sitting in the channel, hanging out, talking with each other, answering questions, asking questions. You should feel comfortable coming in and asking your own questions. However, it's really important to make sure that those questions are well asked. There are actually instructions on how to ask a good question. Read them. Ask questions that way. You are much, much, much more assured of getting an answer if you ask a question that is answerable and is well phrased. However, we also encourage you to go ahead and answer questions, and it's amazing, you can do this a lot sooner than you might think. It's possible for you to begin answering questions really quite early in the process. One of the things that happens is that there's a lot of very low-level questions that get asked over and over and over again, and these are the things that within the first month or two of working in Plone, you learn the answer to. The people who've been there longer have answered these questions 100 times already and are kind of tired of answering them. So when the question comes in, if you're brand new, jump in and answer it. I found that out last week. Here's how you do it. On the one hand, you'll be earning the gratitude of the people who have been in there longer because you'll be answering a question that they didn't really want to deal with because they've seen it 100 times. On the other hand, you'll be earning the gratitude of the person that you just gave the answer to. And this is a wonderful way to start building your reputation and getting known in the community. You notice that we do have our IRC nicknames on our badges, and that's because a lot of us tend to know each other more by that than by face. We'll move on now to testing, QA, and bug filing. All software does have bugs. Quality bug reports are really important in squashing these things. A quality bug report really consists of three things: isolating the problem, making sure that it's actually a problem within a particular location and not in some other add-on product that you've stuck in, including steps to reproduce the problem. Make sure that you can make it happen again to yourself. Once you've managed to do that, go ahead and include those steps in the bug report. And also attach a traceback. Every time there's a bug or an error that crops up in Plone or Zope, there's a traceback that comes with that, or at least most of the time. Go ahead and click on that traceback, get the information, and use it and attach it to the error report. That's going to help the person on the other end who inherits this bug to figure out the answer to it in a much faster fashion. However, don't let these requirements stand in your way. If you have 30 seconds to report something, go ahead and report it. Put in a bug. Don't let things drop. This is the most important thing. Even if you think somebody else might have already reported it, go ahead and do it anyway. It's really important to get bug reports in there, because if we don't know about it, we can't fix it. To report bugs, you want to go to dev.plone.org/plone. For collective products, then what you want to do is you want to go to the product page itself within plone.org and check for the bug tracker that's been attached to it. It's also possible for you to participate in fixing bugs. Gabrielle Hendricks Parker has begun to organize these, what is it, every 2 weeks or maybe once or twice a month, tune-up rallies, which I think are a fantastic thing. They identify a number of bugs, they identify the level of developer that might be required to fix these bugs, and they organize getting people together and actually doing it. This is a tremendous step for the community, and I think it's a wonderful process, and thank you guys for organizing that. Adopt a product or a core component and start participating in fixing the bugs that are in and being reported for that product. The people who have built these things in the first place will thank you. They'll be really, they'll have a lot of gratitude towards you, and it's a wonderful thing for you to do, a great way to build up a little bit of wuffy. Moving on, marketing. Plone needs marketers. More than marketers, we need experienced marketers, people who have a lot of experience within the field. More than that, we need experienced marketers who can make a sort of long-term commitment to the product and to the community, and people who are able to produce deliverables. According to my conversations with John Stahl, there are a number of plans that the Foundation Board has put together for marketing Plone. What we really need is help from experienced and knowledgeable people in executing them. The marketing team is currently led by Nate Auney, and so if you are a marketer, if you're somebody with experience in that field, I would strongly encourage you to contact Nate and figure out how you can get involved. We're really looking for you folks out there, if there are any of you. The marketing team has had a recent project in redesigning Plone.org, and as we saw from the keynote presentation that Alex and Alan gave the other day, it looks great. It's a wonderful project, and we're really glad that it's happening. It'll be nice to have a flashy new site soon. Finally, I want to talk a little bit about blogging. As a method for getting involved, it's often overlooked, but it can be a really effective way to get noticed. As John said to me, Leamy sees all. There is Planet Plone. It's http://planet.plone.org. On that site, if you look in the long list of blogs that runs down the side, there's a little button at the very end of that list you can click on to submit your blog. So if you write about Plone, go ahead and submit your blog. It'll get aggregated in there, and there are people who watch those, people who read about them. Of course, unabashed praise is always welcome. So if you're writing about how great Plone is, or how much you love this product or that product or the other product, that's wonderful. But it's also very welcome to have constructive criticism. If you have something that you don't like about Plone, tell a story about it. What went wrong? What were you missing that you wanted to see? Talk about that, and talk about what you think it should, how it should be done differently. John Stahl talks about when he first started blogging about Plone, getting a call from Alan Runyon shortly after he had begun writing, and having Alan say to him, you know, it's so rare that we get really quality feedback like that. So if you are a person who does this kind of thing, write good stories, write good information, think of ideas, give good constructive criticism. It will be seen and it will be strongly appreciated. And it helps to close the loop between developers who are making these products and the users who are actually on the other end closing things up. So to sum up here, what have we learned today? Well, we've talked about how community is strength, how the strength of Plone is really the strength of its community. We've also learned about how visible participation earns you social capital, which enables you to help influence the direction that Plone is going, or to get the kinds of features out of Plone that you're looking for. If you want to see something, you don't necessarily have to do it yourself, but you do have to contribute to the community in such a way as to let somebody else feel like they should build it for you if you can't do it yourself. So participation is really important, and visible participation is totally vital. We've also learned that there's a space available for pretty much everybody. Developers are always welcome, but we also have room for writers and for editors and for designers. We have space for linguists or for testers or for marketers or for just regular folks. Anybody, whoever you are, there is room for you here and you will be welcomed with open arms. So I'd like you to do at the end here is sort of take a look around you. Look at all of the folks that are sitting in the room here. Say hi to somebody. If you haven't met them before, get up, say hello to somebody that you have not met before and talk with them. Shake hands with them, because this is the community that you're joining, and in the end, we all stand together. I'd like to offer thanks at the end here to the number of people who contributed images to this: Mr. Topf, Beckholt, Splitter, Renee Balls, Ray Balash, Calvin, Dev Convent, and Car74. Along with a number of other people who were more directly credited within the presentation. I got images from all of them, and I'd like to thank them very much for that. Are there any questions? What's that? Just bolted? Ah! Yeah. I actually had a little thing in here about MacGet, but I took it out. So I'm kind of glad that I didn't. Since he was in the room, I'm sort of glad. Yeah, MacGet. If for those of you who don't know, MacGet is our Oscar the Grouch, who hangs out in the IRC channels. Eventually, you will get squashed by him, but understand that he serves a vital function, which is to help us all become better at what we do. Joel.
I've been asked for you to announce that there's coffee back in Polaris after this.
Yes, I will announce that there is coffee back in Polaris after this. Yes. Outstanding. There are flyers available in the back of the room for the upcoming symposium at Penn State. Other questions? Yes, sir.
You emphasized quite a bit conferences and face-to-face. You talked about other ways you can contribute as well. But there are people who are time zone challenged, so phone IFC doesn't work so well. And geographically challenged, like conferences was a very expensive enterprise to me.
Absolutely.
Is that, like, what worries me is that there's so much networking and it's been so worthwhile to come to this. I've been in the community for 4.5 years, and before that, I've been missing out. And it's like, is there any way, I don't have any good solutions, but is there any way we can help the people who don't come to the conferences?
I think that the ways that are most valuable for helping people who can't come to conferences is to build local user groups. In a sense, it's a network, right? As long as you have one or two people in the area who have been to conferences and know people, then by putting together local user groups or local symposia or things like that that draw in people from the local area, you can help them to get involved in the community sort of peripherally at first. There are also a number of other sort of alternative IRC channels that happen in other languages. So if you're not as comfortable in English as some people are, there's, I know, a Spanish language one, and I'm sure that there are ones for other languages. I suspect that there are probably also ones that are geographically or time zone-wise oriented, so that you can jump into a channel that's more active during your waking hours, unless you happen to be a vampire or something like that. Those are really the ways that I think are the best for getting people involved. But also just, jumping in with a group, finding somebody who's writing a piece of software that you like if you're a developer and joining in with that, or joining in with the doc team. A lot of the things that happen there can be done through email. And if you don't necessarily meet face-to-face at first, you do tend to start to build a reputation. And then once you actually do make it to a conference, you have this wonderful feeling of walking into a room and having somebody look at your name badge and saying, oh, you're... And they recognize you. They know who you are. It's really a great feeling to feel like you actually belong in a room. It's kind of a cheers moment in some sort of way. Does that answer the question?
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions? Anybody else out there? All right. Well, thank you all for coming. I hope you enjoyed the talk, and I hope to see you in future events and participating in the Plone community. We're looking forward to meeting you and bringing you in. Thanks, everybody.